Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another video. So this video will be basically just got here to our Chino yard, FedEx yard, and this video is basically going to be showing you guys how we go about pre-trips, just because I haven't done a video like that and it has been requested already, and it's really important for you guys to do a pre-trip, or have your drivers do a pre-trip. This might not be 100% accurate, but this is what we do and how we go about it. So there might be some things I'm missing. There might be some things I add on that usually don't go on it, but this is what we do usually. First things first, we pop the hood, open up the hood, and then I come over here and look at the coolant. That's one of the first things. I work my way from up down. So I check my coolant, make sure the reservoir has coolant in it. I usually have a little flashlight with me as well, just to check, because when you're looking at something, you can't always see if it's leaking or not. Well, obviously those tube seals are leaking, but when I put a flashlight, you could actually see it shine back. Well, I don't know if you could see it on the video, but you could see liquid shining back or oil shining back. So I typically use a flashlight. So first things first, I go ahead and check for all my oil leaks. So yeah, we check for oil leaks. So that right there, how those are leaking. We check for the oil leaks, guys, and note it. So that right there, we're going to go ahead and write it down as notes that we do have leaks on the tubes. That way we could go ahead and order that. And as a driver, you would let your either dispatch or your boss or whoever is in charge of the trucks, the fleet manager, know that you have leaks on that. Write it down, maybe on a text message. That way you have proof that you've been telling them. Also, check your hoses, make sure there's no leaks. You can tell if there's coolant leaking because it will leave like a little residue on it. The next thing we do check is our belts. So we do check to make sure our belts are not frayed or cut or missing chunks like the other day. Can't really show you guys much right here, but I'm trying. So we do check our belts next. That's all good. Then we do check, like this right here is a leak, so we do write this down. I'll clean it up right now actually, and then try to see where the leak is at. Well, I think I found it. It's on the bottom. Those clamps usually start to go out because of the hose. So next is everything down here. Usually those sensors down there, which is the oil pressure sensor, starts to leak. We note all that. Once all that is checked, we go ahead and check our oil. Let me go ahead and check it. If I could put you guys right here. And the oil level is good. Next thing we check is any leaks back here. You'll be able to see the hoses or the lines wet when there's fuel leaks. We check that none of these lines are ripped or butting up against anything or being creased up against the frame. Then I start checking for play on the steering column by wiggling this and making sure that's not wiggling too much or too little, and that this doesn't have any rust around it, around the pitman arm, because when there's rust, you can tell that that's a significant marker that there is something loose there. Water's getting in there and it's starting to rust out. We check all our ball joints and everything around, make sure our shocks aren't leaking. We do check underneath, make sure that the oil pans doesn't have leaks on it. Next, we check the brakes. This is disc brakes on the drums. We also check, make sure that there isn't too much clearance in between the brake shoe. And real quick, guys, this is what I meant about the drum brakes. So you want them to be pretty close. It shouldn't have a gap. Some of them will have, that's out of adjustment. And we also check our slack adjuster, which is, or the distance between the rod on the brake chamber and slack adjuster. So you don't want it to be out of spec. Just adding this little part so you guys know what I'm talking about on the drum brakes as well. And then we would also check the slack adjuster. This one's a disc brakes, like I said. So that's gonna be it right here. We also get we have a little hammer to make sure that there's air, it's not flat. And we move on to the back. All right. Back here we check our glad hands, make sure the seals are good. This one's gonna need replacement soon. And like I said, we start writing all of this stuff down as we go. Make sure our shocks are good, our airbags aren't ripped. In the back, same thing. We do check our brakes. This truck hasn't been moved for a week, so you can tell it has some rust built up, but you do check your brakes. There's a way you could check the brake shoes or brake pads on this one. There's a way you can check your brake pads by looking down at your calipers, making sure that the pistons ain't overextended. And then we do check differentials, the drive shaft, everything, make sure there's no leaks on it. We do check our carrier bearing, make sure it's not ripped and it's still there. And then we hit the tires. We also, one thing I forgot to mention is check the wheels. Like I showed you guys on one of my previous videos, we did find a cracked wheel. Make sure that all the lug nuts are there. Same thing with the rear ones. Make sure lug nuts and our axle seals or axles ain't leaking. Make sure everything's good to go right there. None of the lug nuts are loose. And another thing I do check for is the bottom of the wheels. Usually you can tell if a wheel seal is leaking because the inside of the wheel will be wet. And you will see a small, like, little path of liquid going down the wheel. So we do check for that as well. We check the tires, make sure that they're not missing chunks or too low. Make sure everything's greased up properly. Like I said, check your differentials. This is all before I put air in the truck or let it build up air. So this is before all of that stuff. Make sure everything is good. And I do the same for this side, so I won't show you guys this. But we do check for all that. We check our shocks, make sure our shocks are secured, nothing's leaking. You can tell when they're leaking because you will see oil start coming down on them. Make sure your airbags ain't ripped or broken. Check your tires, make sure they're good. Make sure your U-bolts have the fasteners on it or the nuts on the bottom. Nothing's loose. Your torque arms, make sure they're not messed up. This one's starting to go out a little bit. You can tell the bushing right there. So we will note that. And we go to this side. Same thing. Check your wheels. Lug nuts are there. Get your flashlight out. Make sure nothing's leaking. Here's a indicator of something that we had before it was leaking. See if you can tell. I'll bring it right here. There's a little bit of white residue right there. That's the coolant was leaking before on it. We did go ahead and fix that. So we do go ahead and check all our lines. Like I said, I go from the top to the bottom. back and forth. Just make sure there's nothing leaking. Check our belt from this side as well. Make sure it's not frayed or cut or missing a chunk. Make sure everything's fastened. Make sure there's no major leaks or shocks. And so far so good. So next we do is we turn on the truck. So let me go ahead and turn it on. So once we have the truck on, I do go ahead and turn on the lights and the four ways, and we go ahead and check lights. Make sure our turn signals, headlights, if it's equipped with fog lamps, we have one fog lamp out. So those headlights are good, the fog lamp is out, we have to change that bulb. Then clearance lights are all good. Our side markers, good. Tail lights are good. Our other side markers good. We added these up there, but most trucks don't have them. So lights are good. We let it build up air until it purges. And as you guys know, we also do a applied brake test, which is real simple. You let it purge all the way, let it build up air all the way, purge. Once it purges, you turn everything off, cycle the key to on accessories, you chalk your wheels, you release your yellow brake, and then you press the brake pedal and hold it for a minute and check, well, listen for leaks, and you check your gauge on the air, see if it doesn't go past 100. I'll go ahead and show you guys real quick right now as well. Another thing I'm forgetting to mention, and we tend to oversee, is make sure you have your fire extinguisher and it's properly filled. And then make sure you have your triangles, your emergency accessories. That's one thing we always tend to oversee, and we need to really keep an eye on that, because God forbid you have an emergency on the road, you do need to put up your triangles, and you do need a fire extinguisher in case you catch on fire, guys. So that's one thing I recommend you also check every time. So the truck went ahead and purged right there. We chalked our wheels. The other thing also is check your registrations and your licenses. Make sure everything's current. You usually have that in a book or a binder inside of your truck, so don't forget about that also. Last thing you want to do is go through an inspection and they ask you for your documents and you don't have them. So we went ahead and let the truck purge. We're going to turn it off. Turn the key to accessory so the gauges cycle and we know our air. Go ahead and release the yellow brake. Once it releases everything and the air settles, you go ahead and step on your brake. Hold it for a minute, and it shouldn't lose, I don't know the exact PSI, I forgot about it, but I believe it's 5 PSI within a minute. Usually if you'll be able to hear the leaks on the brake chambers, and you'll be able to see the air go low. All right, guys, that's about a minute right there. That's the last inspection I do, or last check I do. If you want to go more into detail, you go ahead and grab a spray bottle, go ahead and spray your fittings, your airlines, and your airbags. Make sure nothing's leaking, but that's more in depth. So far, this is what I would do as a driver. Basic inspection takes you maybe 10-15 minutes, and it prevents you from a headache on the road. With that being said, guys, thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for the support. Appreciate each and every one of you guys. Like always, if you're at home, enjoy time with your family. If you're out on the road, be safe. Until next one, guys. God bless. Peace.